The thunder that night was so loud it shook the glass walls of our cliffside house. But it wasn't the storm that woke me up. It was the sound of the front door splintering off its hinges. I was 11 years old, curled up under my duvet in a room filled with glow-in-the-dark stars my dad had pasted on the ceiling. He used to tell me those stars would guide me home if I ever got lost. That was the first lie. I heard the shouting downstairs. It wasn't the frantic screaming of a robbery. It was angry, precise, chaotic. Then came the two pops, gunshots, distinct, sharp, final. The silence that followed was heavier than the ocean crashing against the rocks below. I laid there, paralyzed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, waiting for my dad to burst in and say, it was a mistake. But nobody came. When the silence grew teeth and bit into me, I crept downstairs. The living room was a war zone, expensive vases smashed, furniture overturned, and in the center of the Persian rug, my parents lay still. There was so much blood. My father was face down. My mother was slumped on the sofa, eyes open, staring at nothing. I didn't scream. I just froze. But even in that nightmare, my brain snapped a picture of something wrong. My dad was wearing his watch on his right wrist. He was left-handed. He never, ever wore it on the right. The police arrived in a blur of blue and red lights. They wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like stale coffee and told me I was a survivor. They said it was a home invasion gone wrong. But the narrative flipped fast. Within weeks, the headlines changed from billionaire couple murdered to the Parker embezzlement scandal. It turned out my parents weren't just rich, they were thieves. They had stolen hundreds of millions from pension funds and clients. The FBI raided what was left of the house. They took the cars, the art, the money. I was shipped off to live with my Aunt Carol in a cramped apartment that smelled like boiled cabbage and sadness. I went from being the boy who lost everything to the boy whose parents deserved it. But grief makes you obsessive. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just replayed that night in my head. The watch. Why was the watch on the wrong wrist? It clawed at me. 6 months later, digging through a box of junk Aunt Carol had saved for me, I found my dad's old tablet. It was cracked, but I knew the passcode. My birthday. I charged it up under my blankets looking for, I don't know, a memory? An apology? What I found was a draft email written 3 hours before they died. No subject, no recipient. Just, Plan B is active. Midnight. We can't wait for the audit. Midnight. That was exactly when the glass broke. Plan B. I turned into a ghost in my own life. I scoured the internet. I looked at the leaked crime scene photos. The bodies were unrecognizable due to the wounds, convenient for a closed casket funeral. Cremated the next day. No DNA tests publicly released. And then I found the hidden app on the tablet, a calculator vault. I guessed the password, the date of their death. Inside was a single PDF, a bank confirmation for a shell company called Orion in the Cayman Islands, opened 2 days before the murder. Balance, $50 million. My heart stopped. They hadn't been killed because they were stealing. They died to get away with it. I had to be sure. I skipped school and biked 10 miles back to our old house. It was wrapped in yellow police tape, abandoned. I shimmied through the old doggy door. The house was a skeleton, stripped by the government, but I knew a secret. My dad had a candy stash hidden behind a false panel in the walk-in closet. I crawled in, pried the panel open, and my stomach dropped. No candy, just a burner phone, a stack of cash, and 3 passports. I opened them. My parents' faces, fake names, and a 3rd passport, a child's passport. I opened it expecting to see my face. It was blank. No photo. No name. Then I found the letter tucked inside. Handwriting scrawled in haste. We can't take the risk of the 3rd ticket. He slows us down. The nanny will take him to Carol's. It's better this way. He gets the sympathy. We get the life. Don't look for us. They didn't just fake their deaths. They chose the money over me. I wasn't their son. I was baggage. Loose cargo they dropped to make the plane lighter. The bodies in the living room, cadavers, the watch on the wrong wrist, a sloppy mistake in their staging. I sat in that dusty closet and I didn't cry. I felt the tears dry up and turn into something hard and cold, like a stone in my chest. They thought I was a helpless kid. They thought I'd live a miserable life of shame while they sipped mojitos on a beach. They were wrong. I took the burner phone. I took the cash. I went back to Aunt Carol's and I started planning. I was 12 years old, but I possessed a focus that most adults never find. I became a predator. I tracked the IP addresses from the logins on the tablet. I learned Portuguese because the trail led south. Not the Caymans. That was a decoy. They were in Brazil. It took me 2 years. 2 years of mowing lawns, mining Bitcoin on library computers, and saving every penny. When I turned 14, I bought a fake ID on the dark web. I left a note for Aunt Carol saying I was at a sleepover for a week, and I got on a plane to Rio de Janeiro. I wasn't scared. I was fueled by pure high-octane rage. I tracked them to a town called Paraty. It was a paradise of cobblestone streets and turquoise water. I found them on the 3rd day. I was sitting in a cafe, and I saw a woman in a wide-brimmed hat, laughing. I knew that laugh. It was the laugh that used to echo in our kitchen before the glass broke. She was holding hands with a man in linen pants. My father. They looked tan, healthy, free. I followed them to a white villa near the beach. It wasn't a fortress. It was a home, a better home than the one they left me in. I waited until nightfall, the tropical insects humming around me. The French doors were open. They were having a candlelit dinner, jazz music playing. It was sickeningly perfect. I walked right in through the open doors. "Hello," I said. My mother dropped her wine glass. It shattered, the same sound as the night they died. They froze. My dad's tan face went pale white. "Leo?" she whispered. "It wasn't love. It was terror." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the cheap plastic bag holding the watch I'd taken from the crime scene photos. I tossed it onto their dinner table. Clatter. "You forgot this," I said, "and you forgot me." My dad stood up, knocking his chair over. "Leo, wait. You don't understand. We did it for you. We couldn't take you. You would have been a fugitive." "I was a fugitive anyway," I shouted, the anger finally boiling over. "I was a prisoner of your reputation. You let me mourn you. You let me think you were murdered while you played house in paradise." "We have money," my dad pleaded, stepping closer, his hands up like he was soothing a wild animal. "Leo, look around. We have millions. You can stay. We can be a family again. No one knows." He thought he could buy me, just like he bought the cars, just like he tried to buy his freedom. He looked at me and saw a greedy child. But he didn't see who I had become. "I didn't come here to join you," I said, my voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "I came here to close the loop." I pulled out the burner phone, the one they left in the wall. "I already called them." My dad's eyes widened. "Who?" "The FBI agent who handled your case. I sent him your location 10 minutes ago. And the Brazilian Federal Police? They're just down the street." As if on cue, the high-pitched wail of European-style sirens cut through the jazz music. Panic. Pure, unfiltered panic exploded in the room. My parents didn't look at me with regret. They looked at me with hate. They scrambled, grabbing bags, running for the back door like rats fleeing a sinking ship. They didn't even say goodbye. I didn't chase them. I walked over to their table, picked up a piece of expensive bread, and ate it. I watched the flashing lights around the villa. They were caught at the marina, trying to start a boat with a dead battery. The flight back to the States was long, but I slept the whole way. The news cycle went crazy again. Boy wonder tracks down fugitive parents. I was a hero this time, not a victim. I'm 18 now. I live in a small apartment. I work in a bookstore. I don't have millions of dollars. My parents are in separate federal prisons, rotting away for fraud and faking their own deaths. I visit them once a year. We talk through the glass. They talk about appeals, about money, about how close they were to getting away with it. They never ask about me. But that's okay. I don't need their questions. I don't need the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling anymore to know where I am. I learned that the scariest monsters aren't under the bed. They're the people who promise to protect you and then leave you behind. Sometimes, when it storms, I still hear the glass breaking. But then I remember the look on their faces when the siren started. I remember that I wasn't the baggage. I was the one who slammed the trunk shut, and I sleep just fine.